Welcome to the newest episode, a midweek edition of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. In today's video, we're going to follow up on a story from my Watkins Glen recap video and the remarks of Chris Buescher's team and Martin Truex Jr. after the race on the style of driving. A couple of drivers have shared their differing thoughts on the subject, including two-time champion Joey Logano. Also in today's video, we're going to discuss Kevin Harvick's review of the race at the Glen, and more specifically, what he had to say about Kyle Larson getting busted on pit road and the dangerous games drivers have played on pit lane in the past that is really eye-opening to just how competitive the drivers are and what they're willing to do to find any advantage. And we'll wrap up today's video with our By the Numbers segment with our weekly last 5 races analysis. And then we'll have a special breakdown of the next-gen Gen 7 car and the first 100 races. It's really interesting to see how the drivers have performed in those first 100 races, and there are definitely some surprises. However, before we get to those numbers and our first story, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Pristine Marketplace. You know it by now, I love this site, I really do. This signed Joey Logano helmet is proof of that. Before that was the autographed Kevin Harvick helmet. And just an FYI, there will be more signed helmets sliding into the rotation in the future. They are all from my friends at Pristine Marketplace. Some of you have commented in videos how you like Pristine and the amazing collection of memorabilia they offer on their site. It includes helmets like this, plus signed diecast and various pieces of signed art that look great in any man cave or game room. While I've exclusively bought NASCAR items, they have a fantastic selection to choose from in other sports, including college football, NFL, NBA, and MLB. Pristine Marketplace is your one-stop shop for sports and pop culture memorabilia. Yes, pop culture, including things like this beaut. Seriously, go check them out and you won't be disappointed. Click on the link in the description and use promo code BB10 to save $10 off your first purchase. Thanks again to Pristine for sponsoring this video. And now, let's move on to our first story of the day. And it's about an interesting topic that's been talked about regularly in the past and got brought up again this past weekend at Watkins Glen. And that's the driver code. Tyler Reddick and Joey Logano offered their opinions on the topic over the last couple of days. But before we listen to those, I want to go back to Sunday's race and refresh your minds first on what Chris Buescher's team said about the driving at the end of the race.
You're doing great. I know this is ridiculous. It's professional drivers at the highest level that have a hard time making a lap on these things, but you're doing a great job, man. Stay calm and cool.
But Buescher's team wasn't alone in their frustrations. Take a listen to what Martin Truex Jr. had to say about it in his post-race interview.
All these races always come down to this, and I don't really understand how guys can call themselves, the best in the world when they just drive through everyone on restarts at the end of these races. So it's very frustrating, but it is what it is these days. So I'm out of here.
And that brings us to Monday, when Tyler Reddick made his regular weekly appearance on SiriusXM NASCAR radio. And the 2311 racing driver was directly asked the question on what he thinks about the driver code.
Yeah, there is no more driver code. It's gone. I got home and I was on the couch and I saw Martin Truex's post-race comments, and it's so relatable. I completely get where he is at. I get it. It's just, I don't know. You go back and you watch some different in cars, and you just watch people drive into the corner and on a restart just use the car ahead as a brake pedal. It just sucks. I take it as, call me a hypocrite if you want. I've made my mistakes. I've screwed up and run people over. I just don't like driving into the corner and using someone up as a brake. Running someone a little wide is one thing, battling for position, but just running someone off the track, I don't like racing that way. And I've been fortunate, I guess, in years past, races past at these road courses to be ahead of a lot of that crap. And yesterday was one of the few days where we've just had all around bad day and been right there in the middle of it, and seeing it, it just sucks. It is what it is. I hope it changes, but You know, with the old car, you could bump a little bit, but you would knock your radiator out. This car, it just seems like, man, you can use your front bumper as a batting ram. You can just knock people out of the way if you want to. I think in certain situations that's great. When you're racing mano a mano and you have to work really hard to get someone's bumper, give them a shot. That's one thing. Race side by side, but I don't like seeing us go into the corner like that and just use each other up. It's hard to watch.
That was on Monday. Yesterday, Joey Logano made his scheduled appearance on the channel and offered his thoughts on the topic.
Tyler Reddick was on the channel yesterday, Joey, and he said there's no more driver code. What do you think about those comments?
Well, it's changed because of the car, right? I mean, the code, and Tyler wasn't around when the driver code was like at its max, right? Like when everyone hated me because I was the most aggressive guy. That's nothing now. Like literally, that is nothing compared to what it is now. I mean, it's crazy out there, but a lot of that is because of the car. The car accepts so much contact. We used to just touch somebody and cut their tire down, right? So you think about, like, you would end somebody's day just by rubbing them. Now, whatever, right? Like leaning on each other is something that is just part of the game. And when you go down to turn one and you have cars that are tougher now, the bumpers are stronger than they were, right? You used to cave the nose in because we had the bumpers so light, trying to get the splitters to move and not put all the weight up there in the front. Now the bumpers are bulldozers, right? So everyone just, you can, right? Like when you go to your local little go-kart track and they got the big bumpers all the way around it, what ends up happening? You guys clobber each other. Right? Well, we have cars like that now. We have cars that are just tough. Good, bad, any different. I don't know, it's up to everyone else to decide. But the cars accept it, and so the drivers take it. Right? I mean, you're going to take what's there. And when it comes down to those, heavy braking zones, late race restarts, when you're barreling down into turn 1, 3, 4 wide, everyone's leaning on each other. It's just what it is these days.
First thing about Logano's comment, I couldn't help but laugh at his remark, when everyone hated me. Yes, I know based on some of your comments, there are plenty of you who still don't like him. But I also found the rest of his comment interesting, especially toward the end, when the two-time champ said these cars are tough, you're going to take what's there, everyone's leaning on each other, and it's just what it is these days. He also said good, bad, indifferent. It's up for everyone else to decide. I think based on what Buescher's team, Kyle Reddick, and Martin Truex Jr. had to say, they would view it as bad. Logano, however, views it as an opportunity because the car's durability allows for the much more aggressive driving. And it's hard to argue with that, especially if NASCAR isn't feeling that it's worthy of any sort of penalties. So it sounds like the driver's code, as of now, is dead, at least in the eyes of some drivers. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about it. Moving on to our next story, and it's somewhat related to driver code, or at least how drivers behave during a race. This item caught my attention in Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast, where he addressed the vehicle interference penalty Kyle Larson received at Watkins Glen. This is what the Hendrick Motorsports driver told his team after it happened.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry because I'm not even, it's hard to see that orange box when it's in your right front versus left front. I thought I was being extremely cautious, but I guess not.
Here's what Harvick had to say about it.
There's a box right outside of that NASCAR uses for reference as well. But Kyle's way to the right into the pit box of the 43 car there. And we heard him talk on the radio during the race, talk about being on the left side of the car with having to turn right into the pit boxes. And he thought he was being conservative and still wound up deep into the 43 pit box right there. So easy call for NASCAR. Those lines don't even matter when there's not a car in that pit box, but those lines are put there to protect those pit crew guys, to give them space to work, and that's something that's been there for a couple of years now.
He was pretty close to the 43 guys. You said that you can actually challenge that?
Well, during the race, if you feel like somebody impeded your pit stop, you can actually send those videos up to NASCAR if they didn't catch it and see what they think of those calls.
Definitely matters when it's a teammate racing someone who's in the playoffs and you need some help, and this definitely can affect some things.
Yeah, that's right. And something that you used to do, right? Like if you felt like those pit crew guys were too far out on pit road, and you'd brush them. You'd definitely brush them and try to knock tires out of the
Are you kidding?
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
You know, if those guys are too wide and you thought that they weren't giving you space. I mean, it was you'd definitely make them think twice about coming around that car while I was coming into the pit box.
Gamesmanship.
So, you know, you just
Gamesmanship.
you not games that need to be played, and NASCAR kind of put their foot down on all that.
First thing, I thought it was intriguing to hear how teams can send their videos up to NASCAR for a ruling if they feel like they might have been impeded on their pit stop by another car. But the obvious big thing and what Happy said was about intentionally brushing drivers and sending a message on pit road. When I heard that, I immediately thought back to an interview I had with a regular visitor on the channel, William Byron's front tire changer, Jeff Cordero. Take a listen to what he told me in May of last year.
They're trying to get all they can to get in the pit box, and you're trying to do your job. And sometimes there are certain drivers that will not cut you any slack. They will put it right on your heels. They will downshift right next to you to kind of like scare you a little bit for the next one, or they flat out just will not give you room in your own pit box. NASCAR actually this year, they implemented a bunch of rules to kind of keep us a little safer. And you haven't seen a lot of the issues that you normally would see on pit road with guys getting hit or drivers coming too close, because now there's actually a penalty for the drivers if they hit us.
As Cordero said, NASCAR implemented rules before last year to keep the pit crews safer. Larson, as Harvick mentioned on his podcast, violated that rule. Sticking with Kyle Larson, but transitioning to our By the Numbers segment. And I want to start with a look at the 2021 champ's last 5 races, which is also the period of time since he made his claim as the world's best driver. In that span, Larson is ranked 25th overall with an average finishing position of 21.6, including 3 finishes of 21st or worse. His worst, that 37th at Atlanta after making an early exit on that nasty hit into the outside wall. His best was a 4th at Darlington. Larson's numbers are worse than Harrison Burton, Ryan Preece, and Austin Dillon. But Larson isn't anywhere close to being the lowest ranked playoff driver. There are actually 2, including Ryan Blaney, who is ranked 32nd at 25 even with 3 finishes of 29th or worse, including his last place finish this past weekend at the Glen. And at the very bottom of our last 5 is Martin Truex Jr. For fans of the number 19 driver, it's not pretty with all of his finishes 20th or worse, and an average finishing position of 27.8. Now, jumping up to the top of the chart, and despite his 30th place result on Sunday, Kyle Busch still holds down the top spot for a second consecutive week with an AFP of 9.0. He is followed by Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, Christopher Bell, and Ty Gibbs. Also of note inside the top 10 are Zane Smith with an average finishing position of 13.8 with his pair of top 10s, including his 5th at the Glen, and Smith's Spire teammate Carson Hocevar, who is 9th with an average finishing position of 14.6, buoyed by his career-best 3rd place finish last weekend. Interestingly, the top 10 has just 5 playoff drivers in it, with Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, Brad Keselowski, Tyler Reddick, and Austin Cindric. And now, let's move on to the last item for the day from our By the Numbers segment, and it's stepping back and taking a much broader look at the drivers and their numbers from the first 100 races of the next-gen car. Keeping with our current category, I want to start with average finishing position, and as you can see, Chase Elliott has obviously been the most consistent through the first almost 3 seasons of the car, and sits at the top at 12.5. He's followed by Bell, Byron, Chastain, and Larson. There really aren't any surprises in that top 20. Now, let's switch to the most important category, and that's wins. As you can see, my buddy Joel Steuben, who creates these incredible graphics, provided a really cool one that shows the drivers and how many wins they have by year. HMS teammates Larson and Byron are at the top with 11 each, and are followed by a pair of JGR drivers in Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell at 8 each. Sticking with the theme of big teams winning, Joey Logano comes in at 5th with 7 wins and is tied with Tyler Reddick. I think when you shift over to the right side of the graphic, A, it's reflective of the left side, and B, it's pretty amazing to me to see just how dominant the big teams have been. 64 of the first 100 races have been won by HMS, JGR, or Penske. I'm no mathematician, but that's 64% of the time you can count on one of those 3 teams to be in victory lane, or almost 2 out of every 3 races. So how does that translate to winning percentage. Larson edges out Byron at the top because of the fact that he missed the race at Charlotte and has only 99 races under his belt. But as the other graphic showed, he's followed by Hamlin, Bell, Reddick, and Logano. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about from the first 100 races is DNFs, and we'll circle back to Kyle Larson. Not because he's at the top spot as far as DNF percentage, that's held down by Noah Gragson, and he's followed by his SHR teammate Josh Berry and Austin Dillon. Those are names you would expect in this category, but look at Larson. He's in there at a whopping 20.2%. In the first 99 races for him, he's recorded 20 DNFs. Think about that. In the next-gen car's first 100 races, Larson is almost twice as likely to score a DNF versus a race win. Wreckers or checkers, baby. I definitely encourage you to go take a look at all the graphics for the first 100 races on Joel's site, stube.com. Great info, and so thankful he allows me to share these with you. Speaking of thanking folks, I also want to thank the gang at Pristine Marketplace for sponsoring this video. Remember, if you're looking for the best place to buy NASCAR memorabilia like this Joey Logano helmet, or authenticated autographed items from the NFL, NBA, and MLB, go check out their site. Click on the link in the description and use the promo code BB10 to save $10 off your purchase. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this episode. I want to get your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the driver code and the two different viewpoints drivers are taking. Who do you side with? And let me know what you think about Harvick's admission about the dangerous games he used to play on pit road with other pit crew members. Anything to find an advantage. And lastly, I want to hear what you think about our weekly last 5 races analysis and our breakdown of the numbers for the first 100 races in the next-gen car. What was your favorite or least favorite statistic? Again, thanks so much for checking out the latest video and supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.